And can you believe how fast our country's being destroyed? And, we've skipped, I thought everyone was saying socialism's coming. We've skipped right over it to communism.
Yeah.
You know,
I really agree with that.
Oh, look, there's a million questions that Trump should be asked. I would like to have Trump define communism, or Mike, either of them define communism. I want to see it. I want to see Trump define what communism is. I want to see some communism is when it's evil and Medicare, okay? I want to just hear it just one time. Just somebody asks Trump, what is communism? Well, it's what the Biden administration is doing. I want to see it.
and do you think that all that could have happened without the corrupt media? I mean, that was the big cover-up, wasn't it?
No, if the media were...
By the way, let's say it was covered up by the media, okay? Do you know how stupid it would be to cover it up if you're the media? Think about what the media loves. They love divisive, grabbing headlines, okay? If a media company could say to the world, oh my God, Trump is the real president, we were all fooled, it was all a corrupt scandal, and this election was really stolen. That would be the story of the century and would get bajillions of clicks. So the fact that even Fox, which would love to report on something like that, couldn't find basically anything. And even OAN, which is just the most far-right network that touches the coattails of relevancy, right? Had to release disclaimers before airing the guy on the right, Mike Lindell's documentary full of bullshit, where it basically said, hey, look, everything you're about to watch is nonsense and we endorse none of it. The Pillow Man, as we all know, Mike Lindell, had an interview with Donald Trump. And I was told that this interview was particularly interesting. Of course, Mike Lindell is the person who did the very famous I'm gonna investigate all the election fraud and I'm gonna do a huge thing and the Supreme Court's gonna investigate, and everything fell apart. So then they had this interview, and I was told that it was very interesting. So I wanted to actually check this interview out. His historic interview with President Donald J. Trump. Brilliant.
And I'm going to be interviewing our real president, Donald J. Trump.
I do not know how anybody could be so deluded. After everything, after not only it being clear to the entire world who the clear president is, who is the person running the country, who is the person passing the laws, who is the person doing everything, Joe Biden. You look past that, you look past everything. The real president, Donald J. Trump. Now, that's on the first count. Now, on the second count, on the idea of voter fraud, this dude made so many claims. Every week, he would say, in 5 days, everything's going to go down. I'm going to have so much evidence, I'm going to drop it, and it's going to change everything. And in 5 days, he would just drop a bunch of code online that would mean literally nothing if you ask experts. It'd be like if I took the random code from a video game and just threw it on the internet and said, there's proof. He did that, but with the Dominion voting machines, right? That's what he was trying to prove. He would just take random code. It'd be like if I, 1 second. Let me think. I know what to do, right? It'd be like I was like, I'm going to prove that Mike Lindell's website hosts Hamas and Hezbollah and ISIS, everything. And fucking the IRA or the Democrat abortion sites, right? And then I just did this, right? Boom. Look, here's the evidence, guys. Look at all these numbers and data and things. Evidence. Do you believe me now? That's what they did, okay? That's what they did, but with just a bunch of voting machines. And that was his big evidence, right? He was like, I'm in, easy hack. So there was never any evidence, and none of it ever went to the Supreme Court. It was all bullshit. And so if, I mean, we could do a whole deep dive into the Mike Lindell accusations of voter fraud, but that was 90% of it, was just random code.
President Donald J. Trump. This is very exciting for me. I never thought I'd be the interviewer. Usually I'm the interviewee. And I've got a lot of questions I wrote that I don't believe he's been asked. Some of them I know.
Okay.
And
wait. Back up. Let me see those questions.
A lot of questions I wrote.
Dude. These look like the deranged writings of just a complete maniac. He's got stuff like scratch. You just type it up, man. You're telling me you got like Lindell TV in the bottom hand corner if you look over there, right? But you can't just type it up? Jesus Christ, man.
And I'm very excited to see that we can all share and hear some of the things that the questions that all of you out there wanted to hear when we asked you all what would you like to hear in this interview. And so enjoy, and we'll see you when it's over. Well, it seems like a lifetime ago that we met in August of 2016.
Right.
And you know, my whole life, I didn't think politics affected me at all. And one of the things that you've shown us all is that it affects almost everything in our lives that politics do. And I've told many people that you have a gift of problem, solution, and what it would manifest to. And I think that that's, you know, that's why I thought that you'd be the best president ever when I left that office. And one of the things,
you know, an interview is going to be good when you start it off by just jerking off the person you're interviewing. Also, Trump looks terribly unimpressed. And why is he wearing a tuxedo? Why?
all the decisions and
Like this feels a lot like I have no clue. I'm actually perplexed. Why is he actually? Did he go from like an event that was a lot more formal? Did he really like? He has never put on a tuxedo for any interview. Why Mike Lindell?
that you made manifested to December of 2019, where it was the best time in history. Where Merry Christmas, we had the lowest unemployment,
We had
the highest consumer confidence. But I want to ask you a question that you probably haven't been asked, and that's was running the country. Was it what you expected it to be, or was it like when you were running your business?
So I would say there are things you can learn, and you have learned from running a business, but there's nothing like running this country. And part of it is a beautiful thing, and part of it is a horrible thing. You know.
By the way, I wonder if Mike Lindell or Trump would have ever brought up, since we both care so much about like joblessness, that joblessness claims under Joe Biden has hit a 50-year low actually, and it's actually dropped to a new pandemic low as well of I think it was 199,000. But whatever, who cares? We don't need to. Who needs to look at specifics? As he dug us out of the pandemic that Trump fucking bungled. Also, chat, look, there's a million things you can criticize Mike the Pillow Man for. Don't go after his history with drugs, please. That's like the last thing you should be criticizing him for. I'm happy that he got off of crack, okay? That's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Business, if you have a problem and solution, I mean, you do have a gift of it's knowing what will manifest you to help all people.
Right.
And I think you've shown what a politician should be to help the people, not just
solving problems.
Or
You have to
solving
solve
problems. Common sense.
Yeah. The wall was never built. Mexico certainly didn't pay for the wall. What actually did Trump like set out to do? Like that he actually got. Does anybody have the Trump like accomplishments? Like I know that I forget what organization, what news website like publishes like all the claims like a president claims they were gonna do and how many they actually delivered on. Does anybody have that and can link it to me quick? I'd appreciate it.
A lot of
Common
common
sense.
sense. You're right.
Okay, now we look at the exact opposite that's there, what political decisions can do. And can you believe how fast our country's being destroyed? And, you know, we've skipped, I thought everyone was saying socialism's coming. We've skipped right over it to communism.
Yeah.
You know.
I really agree with that. If you look at the press, the radical.
Look, there is no question look, there's a million questions that Trump should be asked. I would like to have Trump define communism. Or Mike, either of them define communism. I want to see it. I want to see Trump define what communism is. I want to see some communism is when it's evil and Medicare, okay? I want to just hear it just one time. Just somebody asks Trump, what is communism? Well, it's what the Biden administration is doing. I want to see it.
It's become a radicalized press, but we don't have freedom of the press.
And to be clear, like Biden is probably was literally the most moderate option outside of John Delaney and Bloomberg that the Democrats could have proposed. Calling Biden a communist is nothing more than virtue signaling. It has no attachment to reality whatsoever.
Anymore. And you're absolutely right. That's the first step toward communism.
Right,
We don't have any press. They don't cover. If you do something great,
What?
Mike, and you've done some great
Wait,
things,
what did he just say? What's the first step towards communism?
radical, it's become a radicalized press, but we don't have freedom of the press anymore. And you're absolutely right. That's the first step toward communism.
Hitler didn't have freedom of the press. LCC doesn't have freedom of the press. Erdogan, who, by the way, Trump liked and helped invade Syria, Erdogan, doesn't have freedom of the press. He arrests people for, like, disagreeing with him. Does that make Erdogan, who's, like, he likes, a communist? Like, what? Okay. That's what it is. The first step for communism, which has to do with workers owning the means of production, is just, like, press censorship. Brilliant.
We don't have any press. They don't cover. If you do something great, Mike, and you've done some great things, they won't report it.
I call that going Fox on you.
Yeah, well,
Don't go Fox on me.
no, I understand that. I understand exactly what you're saying. But the fact is, you've done incredible things, and they won't report it.
Right.
If you're a little bit offline, if you have a little bad day, they make it look like it's one of the worst days in history. And actually, the worst is if you do something good, they'll actually make it into like you did something bad. No, the press is very, very dishonest, and it's really
Hating on Trump is okay. Here's something I want to talk about for a second. So anytime I criticize Trump or report on Trump, what you'll ultimately see, at least once during any segment I'll do it, is you'll see somebody come into chat and they'll say, the libs and the left are still criticizing Trump. I mean, come on. You still got Trump derangement syndrome? Okay, number one, he was just president of the United States. If he does something notable, I'm going to cover it. Number two, Trump has made it very clear he's probably going to run for president again. And if somebody who would dominate a primary if he enters the primary, if Trump runs for president in 2024, he will be the Republican nominee. Whether he'll win or not, I mean, it's 3 years. Anything could happen. If Trump decides to win and doesn't like have a major medical health crisis between now and 2024, which it looks like all signs point towards him running, then I think it's important to cover when he does stuff because he's going to run for president again. I feel like it is important to cover what prospective nominees for president are doing. So you can call it Trump derangement syndrome if you want, but if somebody's going to run for public office, the highest office of the land again, then I think it makes sense to cover what they're doing.
to the detriment of our country.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest evil we have right now, or the biggest detriment. A year ago, we watched the biggest crime in history unfold.
Okay, before they start getting into election fraud conspiracies, okay? Here is the Trump promise meter. PolitiFact. Tracking President Donald Trump's campaign promises. Let me move all this stuff off screen. There's so much stuff on screen. Got off screen. The Trump-O-meter is a PolitiFact meter for tracking 100 promises Trump made during his 2016 campaign. We tracked President Barack Obama's promises too. By the way, they're also tracking Joe Biden's as well. I remember, and I had having a conversation about Biden. We were looking at that. For each campaign promise, our reporters research the issue and then rate it based on whether the promise was achieved, promise kept, promise broken, compromise, stalled, in the works, or not yet rated. We rate the promises not on the president's intentions or effort, but on verifiable outcomes. Trump-O-meter scoreboard. So 23% promises kept, 22% compromises, and 53%, the majority, broken. The thing is, wait, let's compare this to Obama quick. I'm actually interested. Okay, so the majority promises were kept. It looks like 25 to 30% were compromises, and like 20% promises broken. Things like eliminate oil and gas tax loopholes and expand the child and dependent care credit. Okay, so in comparison to other ones, or at least the one we just looked at least Obama, the majority of Trump's promises were broken, which is not a good. Okay. I get it. You guys like the Obama meme, okay? It's gonna get old fast, okay? Not pull a Let's Go Brandon and have a joke go on for too long, okay? Jesus, you guys are so easy to entertain. Top 5 promises. Repeal Obamacare. Well, that's, like, obviously broken. Place lifetime ban on White House officials lobbying for foreign governments, which is hilarious considering what happened to Michael Flynn. Approve the Keystone XL project and reap the profits. Oops. Well, that didn't go through. Require price transparency from healthcare providers. Oh, that's actually something he did make progress on. Close parts of internet where ISIS is. I don't even know how you promised that, but you. But I like how they just say Trump didn't close parts of the internet to ISIS. I don't even know what that means. Open up libel laws, terrible, and thankfully not done. Terminate Barack Obama's immigration executive orders immediately. Federal courts ordered Trump administration to fully reinstate DACA. Don't really know why that's a compromise. Place lifetime ban on foreign lobbyists raising money for American elections. Trump breaks promise to ban foreign lobbyists. Not take vaccinations. Trump took working vaccines at his properties. Okay, so it seems the majority of his promises were broken. Okay, just wanted to go through a few. So, which I think is comparative to Obama. And I would probably, you know what, I don't have the full list in front of me, but I would say probably to most presidents, not a great standard.
You've compared it to a robbing of a diamond store, and they were caught, and we had enough evidence, I believe, to pass it out to 300 and some million people here.
To be clear, his evidence was random code and nonsense. Okay? It was the ramblings of a maniac. Literally, the ramblings of a maniac, okay? There's no evidence that he had. He kept saying that he would drop evidence that would change everything, and every time it would be literally nothing.
You take a piece, you take a piece, and everybody went to.
He said that this would change the game, like it would go all the way to Supreme Court and Trump would become president again. Nothing ever happened.
Prison for life, and they, I don't believe that this. We all saw the evidence, but no judges. I want to tell you, no judges, including the Supreme Court, looked at the evidence. They just kicked the can down the road and said, "We're no standing, no standing." And do you think that all that could have happened without the corrupt media? I mean, that was the big cover-up, wasn't it?
No, if the media were not involved in this cover-up, and they were involved together, it was collusion because they were communicating together. I remember they used the word, it was a man.
Wait, to be clear, does he mean that there were people doing the fraud and they were in direct communication with the media? By the way, let's say it was covered up by the media, okay? Do you know how stupid it would be to cover it up if you're the media? Think about what the media loves. They love divisive, grabbing headlines, okay? If a media company could say to the world, "Oh my God, Trump is the real president. We were all fooled. It was all a corrupt scandal, and this election was really stolen." That would be the story of the century and would get bajillions of clicks. So the fact that even Fox, which would love to report on something like that, couldn't find basically anything, and even OAN, which is just the most far-right network that touches the coattails of relevancy, right? Had to release disclaimers before airing the guy on the right, Mike Lindell's documentary full of bullshit, where it basically said, "Hey, look, everything you're about to watch is nonsense and we endorse none of it." The fact that they're not jumping on the story should be a big indicator in and of itself that this is nonsense.
Manufactured something, and
do you think that Trump really thinks the election was stolen? I think Trump is so conceited that he probably does. That he saw enough weird Reddit threads or tweets to actually convince himself. He wants to believe it, so he believes it.
all of a sudden it was on ABC, NBC, CBS. It was on everything. It was a word, and they passed it out. It's almost like they said, because it wasn't a word you'd ever use for politics. The word was manufactured. And the headline of every newscast was manufactured. They were told to use it. No, they're they've colluded. It's just a terrible thing that's happened to our country, and it's got to straighten out.
Yeah, it does. I tell a journalist every day, just had one here today from the Huffington Post. I said, why do you want to destroy our country?
Yeah.
I told him, you attack myself, my employees, my company. I'm going, what am I doing? Just trying to get the word out, of something to help save our country.
But they don't let you get an honest word out. They'll take what you say and they'll make it totally different. You won't even recognize it the next day. And it really is misinformation or disinformation. What they do is, in terms of disinformation, it's genius, but so bad for this country.
Well, you get that, or they don't, or they do.
Look, I'm sorry. Okay. I don't think I need to tell anybody watching right now that Trump's a liar. But can we do the Trump Sharpie hurricane thing for just 1 second? Does anybody remember this? When Trump said that a hurricane could touch somewhere and he was just wrong. And so instead of saying he was wrong, he just took a Sharpie and extended where the hurricane was gonna hit. Because he said it could hit Alabama. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but man. Dude, there's nobody I would trust less on what is and isn't disinformation. There's no one in the world. Well, that was the funny. The thing is, I should be angry, but that one's just so funny. It's hard to be angry at.
When I had the cyber symposium, getting a little ahead here, but when I had that, afterwards, nobody won the $5 million prize because it was all evidence from the 2020 election.
Yeah.
And then they went completely Fox on me, or completely silent, I say. Nobody talked. They didn't do a bad story about me for 9 days.
Yeah.
Then they said I sold my plane because I went broke trying to find the product as I'm flying around it. Then the next day I tell them, I didn't sell my plane. I said,
Trump is suffering.
The next day,
you can tell right now, Trump, okay, I don't know, maybe it's just me. Do you guys think Trump's suffering through this right now?
that story about me for 9 days.
Yeah.
Then they said I sold my plane because I went broke trying to find the product as I'm flying around it. Then the next day I tell them, I didn't
He looks like he does not give a fuck. He looks like he gives exactly zero fucks about what Mike has to say about himself.
sell my plane. I said, I just hired 200 more employees. And they go, the next day the article comes out, Mike Lindell hires 200 more employees. He's making money off this.
Yes.
You know.
I know.
But
Very sad when you look at what the networks, even the ones that are supposedly on our side, and they're not many.
right.
And there is no side. What we want is a strong military, great education for our children, a nice house to live in. It's so basic.
Common sense things.
And they fight us. It's very
disgusting. It's disgusting. Well, you go back to November 4th, and we all lived this
What was Trump's comprehensive housing policy? I don't remember that being a cornerstone of his campaign at any point.
twilight zone. I always say, like, there was an old saying, if a tree falls in the forest and no one heard it, did it really fall? Well, then the media tells us there is no forest.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it was back in November and December. And,
now.
What?
we were, yeah, I know. But we were all living in this twilight zone. You were living there with us. But then you had all the betrayals and attacks on you that escalated to a whole nother level.
You want to know why I think Trump's here? Trump's banned off Twitter, and he just wants to say some crazy shit, so he has to go literally to anyone who will listen to him, because no longer will people just listen to him on Twitter. I honestly think that's what this is.
Eric told me once that you said right before you were going down that escalator to make your famous announcement that you said, well, we're going to find out now who our true friends are.
That's true.
And I've never forgot that he said that to me. And, it was everyone out there since that time. We've all been praying for you to have strength. And my question is, what does give you the emotional strength to handle it all?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned people, because I've had some disloyal people, and we always do through life. You put somebody in, you think they're great. Sometimes you put somebody in, you're not so sure, and they turn out to be great. But I've also had tremendous people in the White House. We had some tremendous successes. We had some really very, very talented people. But we also had people that were very bad and very incompetent. You put them in, they're highly recommended by rhinos and others.
What, the Kemps of the world?
Yeah, well, and they just don't do. No, he was very disappointed.
By the way, the reason why they don't like Brian Kemp is because, and I hope my editor put something here, like to show the audio from when Trump, called the Georgia state officials. He called Georgia up and was like, find me thousands of votes to make me win the election.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state. I think you have to say that you're going to re-examine it. The people of Georgia are angry. The people of the country are angry. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, that you've recalculated.
Well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong.
You should want to have an accurate election, and you're a Republican.
We believe that we do have an accurate election.
No, I know you don't. You know what they did, and you're not reporting it. That's a criminal. That's a criminal offense.
And they just said, no, that's illegal. And that was all it took for Brian Kemp's approval rating to tank and for Trump to drop all support for him. Stoic Squirrel, thanks for the tier 1.
I mean, I got him elected. If it wasn't for me, he wouldn't be governor of Georgia. He wouldn't even be close. He would have lost. He wouldn't have won the primary to start off with, and he wouldn't have run the race against Stacey Abrams. So he was a tremendous disappointment. And all we wanted was voter integrity. That's all we wanted. So it was very sad. And there are others. For the most part, it has been loyal. I mean, I've had great loyalty from a lot of people. Now, people don't want to write about them. You know, it's not as exciting or doesn't sell the print.
But I mean the emotional strength. Where do you get the emotional strength from? Because we pray for you all the time to have that.
People ask. It's not only from that. It's just the whole. They come at you from every
the
different
attacks
side.
and everything.
I went 4 years.
The weight on your shoulders.
Yeah, and now you read and it was totally phony to start off with, but now you're reading all about the Russia thing. It was a hoax.
Yep.
It was set up by Hillary Clinton and the Democrats and paid for, and they dealt with Russia.
Right.
Now, what could be crazier than that? It just came out today, as you see, they nabbed another one. And her lawyer was involved. I mean, the whole thing, Durham, while it's taking a long time, it's very devastating things that he's coming out with to them. So, that was a hoax. The phone call with Ukraine, it was a perfect call.
Absolutely.
You got impeached over a phone call. There was
There was a perfect phone call, okay? To be clear, tons of people were indicted over said perfect phone. Okay, whatever. Who cares? Perfect phone call. Everything's fine. Rudy Giuliani's house raided. Perfect phone call. Everything's fine.
a perfect call. I'll never forget Tim Scott, who was a terrific man and a terrific senator from South Carolina. He read the call. Fortunately, I had people transcribing it. Had they known that, they would have never done the impeachment because they found out much later.
Right.
But fortunately, we had it. But, Tim Scott said, he read the call. It was a perfect call. What are you doing?
Right.
But they were down the line. They said, let's just keep going. These are people
the
that
attacks.
they're bad people
No.
in many ways.
So you love the country so much that you're just, you've got better things to do.
Yeah. No, I love the country, and we made such.
Hey, look, I just want to say my favorite Discord calls are the ones that end with all my friends getting indicted. Okay? Those are the best Discord calls. All the other ones are not even worth having.
You're constantly under attack. Constantly.
Right.
And by the way, do you hear that beautiful tropical rain? Isn't that
that's
incredible?
awesome. That's awesome.
Really come down. One thing in Florida, when it comes down, it comes down hard.
Yeah.
But no, I love the country. And I had a goal, and the goal was to do what we did. And I think you can almost say that
we had a goal, and the goal was to do what we did. Brilliant.
Presidents, if any, did what we did when we rebuilt the military. When we did so
amazing.
much.
Yeah.
What of the military did Trump rebuild? What was the dilapidated military that he rebuilt? I need to know. What part of the military was dilapidated and not funded enough? And what part of it did he rebuild? I need to know.
And we did it under a lot of pressure because there was so many other outside forces that were fighting us. I just considered it a great honor.
Basically, no one fought you on the military, okay? Everyone was like, you want to give the military more money? Okay, do it. Like, in Congress, that is.
I was very disappointed, as you were, as millions of people were. I think I read 78% of one of our great parties felt that the election was rigged and stolen. And it was rigged. It was
Well, that brings up, you've got, you talk about betrayal. You have Bill Barr that before the election says, that machines could be hacked and China could be, we have to worry about China. Then he says to everyone, to the whole country,
hey, thanks for somebody joining the game.
To overturn the election.
Appreciate it.
Then we find out now, we're finding all this later, he sends a letter, an email, whatever, and ordering an attorney or a U.S. attorney in Pennsylvania.
You know what this is? Do you guys ever, you guys all have hobbies and interests, right? Well, Mike Lindell's hobby is being a crazed conspiracy theorist over the election and it being stolen. So this is his chance to actually talk to somebody who, number one, probably believes everything he's saying because it just helps him. Donald Trump probably doesn't understand a single thing he's talking about right now. Doesn't know the context of anything. but agrees with him, so therefore he'll agree with Mike. And actually might somewhat care. And so he's just dumping it all out because he finally gets a chance to talk to somebody who won't look at him like he's actually cuckoo.
Yeah, not to look at the evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, that's shameful. And then you got like Chris Krebs that said it was the fairest election ever, the best election ever. And then a couple months later, he's on MSNBC. And what does he say? They said, what's the biggest threat to our country? China attacking us in a cyber attack right down to the local races. I said, what, did he copy the evidence? You know, I mean,
literally, these two things are completely unrelated. Why? Okay, whatever.
I don't think, you know, people, it was to live in the twilight zone there. And then Radcliffe, how about January 7th, when John Radcliffe, the DNI director of national intelligence, whatever, he comes out with a letter saying that China, the evidence of China tech had been suppressed. And then, isn't that kind of funny that the same day they took away all our freedom of speech? They took away your social media, the media. When
the day Trump was banned off of Twitter was when the First Amendment ceased to exist. The First Amendment, which preserves, basically says that the government cannot infringe on your speech, ceased to exist once a private company said you cannot use our platform. Brilliant.
Into this attack, at that point, I mean, that had to be, at least for me, I'm going, this can't even be real. They take away the president's voice and millions of us. I mean,
man, for Trump being a man without a voice, he sure does talk a fucking lot.
I mean, at that point was, how were you feeling then? I mean, was it like a disbelief, or was it
So I had hundreds of millions of people too.
Yeah.
We had a tremendous, whether it was Twitter or it was Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah.
I had, just massive numbers of people, and all of a sudden, one day you wake up and you don't have that voice anymore, and you have to rebuild it in a sense, in a different form.
Right.
That was terrible. You mentioned Barr, that was very disappointing. You mentioned Krebs. I don't know Krebs. I don't even know who this guy is, but I see him on television all the time, on CNN and MSDNC, as I call it. This guy was talking about the honesty of elections. Well, all you have to do is take a look at some of the reports that have come out since all of that. These elections were incredibly dishonest. Arizona, where they put the findings, thousands and thousands and thousands of votes, far more than you need. You look at Georgia, it was terrible. Right. You look at Pennsylvania. Now, the good news is a lot of those states, Pennsylvania's got subpoenas now all over the place. They're going to get to the bottom of it. Right. You see what happened today in Wisconsin, where they found thousands and thousands of votes. Right. It was just corrupt. And things are...
Okay, let's pretend for a moment that everything Trump is saying is true. Thousands and thousands and thousands of votes isn't enough to overturn the election, okay? You would need tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of votes in multiple different states, and all the votes you're finding have to be specifically for Donald Trump, none of them for Biden. Brilliant.
Are happening now.
Right. Well, you've said let's fix 2020 first.
Well, I think it's important that they know what happened in 2020, and once you know what happened, they have a decision to make. Look, I think enough people know what happened. You look at Arizona, we don't need all those states. We need 2 big ones and 3 small.
I know that I don't think Michael Lindell is one of these conspiracy. I don't know for sure. But you guys know those people who still think Trump is running things? There's like QAnoners who still think Trump is like running the show, There's a decent amount of them, just like the JFK Jr. people. Now, the thing that I always am interested in asking those people in particular is, if Trump is still running things, does that mean we can blame him for inflation and all the problems we're facing? And I want to know the answer to that question. Because if that's the case, does that mean also that Trump canceled the XL Keystone Pipe? I just want to know, okay? I just want to know where the logic starts and ends, okay?
Small ones, I guess. It's separately. You can have 2 big ones, or you can have 3 small ones, something like that. But we know what happened.
Right.
What's the update to the JFK Jr. revival? 1 second. Let me go check quick. Give me a moment, guys. Do this quick. Checking. Let me do. Yes. He's still dead.
You see it in the reports. You see it in everything. And also, they're guarding. They're so guarding it. They don't want to give the votes. They don't want to give the ballots. Mail-in ballots are a disaster. They basically use COVID-19 or the China virus to rig the election, and it's a shame.
Yeah.
And I hope the Republicans get tougher. Mitch McConnell's
They
a
need to.
disaster. The guy's a disaster, the old crow. He should have never approved that. He should have never allowed. And it was very sad when Mike Pence gave those votes over, because when you have more votes than you have voters, when you have other things that are so wrong, and that was then. Now, since then, many other things have happened, which show that you were right and I was right, and people were right that were looking at it.
Right.
It's a very sad thing. We proved two things. Number one, the press is dishonest, and number two, and some people thought it, but it had a very high approval rating. Now it's got lower than Congress.
Right.
Press is dishonest. We have a very dishonest press, and we have rigged elections, and of course we have horrible borders. But we had the best border that we've ever had in the history of our country. That means drugs and people.
Absolutely.
And now it's the worst.
Wait, so, okay. If you made the best border in the history of the country, even though he didn't fulfill the promise of making a wall across the totality of the southern border, which was his promise, and Mexico didn't pay for it, if it was still somehow, both, even though he didn't fulfill either of those campaign promises, if it was the best border ever, how is it so it could get collapsed in 100 days? If you make something that's the best thing ever, it usually can't just be completely destroyed in 100 days, right? Because if it's the best something ever or whatever, it should be able to stand the test of time, right? Like Social Security, for example. If Social Security immediately collapsed once FDR was out of office, it wouldn't be one of the best policies in American history.
Period of 9 months, it went from the best ever to the worst ever.
No, you're exactly right. But I've said it before, and I've been telling everybody, everyone says, well, Mike, when are the machines going to be on? When's our real president coming back in? I get these questions all the time. And I said, you know what? God's had his hand in all this, I believe. Look what's happened on the positive side. We've seen evil rise up, and you see.
Wait. So does Mike actually think Donald Trump is still going to be reinstated as president? Dude, it's almost a year in. I'm sorry. You got to tap out, man. Come on.
All the bad politicians, you see all the where the corruption was. So more and more is getting revealed every day. And I say it's like two buckets. You have a bucket here with everyone that knows it was rigged and everyone knows what happened. Back then, if Democrats are going, hey, even though they're on the winning side of a rigged football game, they're going, they don't want to believe it. Now, even 35% of them say it was a rigged election, and they want.
That's bullshit. I have no what. Rigged election, Democrats polling. I refuse to believe it. If it is, then this country's doomed. It is literally doomed. Half of Republicans say Biden won because of a rigged election. This is the most recent one. It's from November 18. Okay. 16% of Democrats. Okay, well, is there anything more recent? Poll. Both Democrats and Republicans believe there is a possibility. Okay. Wait, is it a possibility the 2020 election will be rigged? Okay, that's a totally different question. Jesus. Okay, what about the states? Wait, I don't know what the Austin American Statesman is, okay? So we're not going to use that one. Look, it seems I can't find any sources for 30. Okay. Can we look up 30%? Maybe that'll help. 17% of Democrats. Okay. Look, I'm sorry. The number doesn't exist.
Horrific things that are going on in our country, and I believe their eyes are getting opened up because nobody believes the fake media anymore, the crooked media. No, do you think we'll be able to beat the media? Don't you think that's the big win, getting around to get our voices out? You do your great letter.
I think we're getting our voices out. I think we're getting them out. Mm-hmm. That's why they realize that watching some of these, you look at the ratings on television, the ratings are so low because they've lost credibility. Yeah. But I think when you talk about silencing of the press, I really think it's because they have one subject they don't want to talk about, and that was the 2020 presidential election scam. And it all evolves around that, whether it's Hunter Biden that they silence. When the New York Post came out with those exposés, those horrible exposés, they tried to put the New York Post out of business. Nobody ever heard it. That should have been a big story in every paper. Nobody ever covered it.
How did they try to put the New York Post out of business? The New York Post isn't going to go out of business for inflammatory headlines. It's famous for it, okay?
They don't want to get anyone.
Wait. Inflammatory headlines is literally their business model. They're fine.
Near the election fraud because we're too close.
Right.
Absolutely. They don't want it to be revealed. They will do anything to stop it. And when you hear silence, when you hear all of that, that's the thing they want silence because You read that Time magazine article, the cover of Time magazine.
Well, they bragged about it.
It basically, they couldn't help themselves.
Yeah.
They did it, and they're saying, we gotta, it wasn't a full brag. It had to say it, but
Right.
it was a brag.
Absolutely.
And that's the way it happened. That's a part of the way it happened. But they couldn't help themselves. They did something they can't believe.
Right.
And they needed much more because we did much better. We got so many votes. We swamped them. And they just went crazy that night.
Right.
And for a short time thereafter. But they don't want to talk about it. But they did talk about it in Time magazine. It was very interesting.
Well, we've also, we've been with you, holding firm to let's fix 2020 first.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, millions upon
Does anybody have the clip of Trump saying there's nothing worse than somebody who can't take a loss, who can't accept an L in relation to 2016 and Hillary?
millions of people now are getting the courage, and they're out there on the ground. Their audits are getting done. They're doing. They're encouraged. They want the. We got to have fair elections. Our country's gone. If it's not fixed by 2022, it's over.
And Mike, I have good people and bad people. But I have a lot of good people say, sir, forget about 2020. You're going to win. You're way up in the polls. You're going to win. I say, we're not going to have a country in 3 years.
No
This
way.
guy did this in 9 months. He destroyed our country.
Dude, if you destroyed the country in 9 months, then you were a shit president. If all of your basically achievements were that easy to be undone, I'm sorry.
I say, make America great again. That was my theme. And it was going to be keep America great. I gave that away. I threw them all away, the hats. It's not because America's not great now.
No.
America
went
is
down
a
there.
laughing stock all over the world.
Oh, he's got the old talking points out. See, when Trump is president, not a laughing stock. Nobody laughs at Trump. There is nobody in the world that finds Trump humorous in any way when he uses a Sharpie to say that Alabama's going to get hit by a hurricane. Biden, though, makes laughing stock. Obama made America a laughing stock. Trump, never, at all. Never funny at all. When he's putting Hershey bars on the heads of children for Halloween, nobody's laughing at that. No one at all.
World. When you have
When he's calling the president of the Kurdistan regional government Mr. Kurd, nobody laughed at it.
Afghanistan, with that horrible tragedy that happened in Afghanistan, when you have millions of people pouring in, we have no idea who they are, just pouring into our country. They could have finished the wall in 2 weeks. They could have had the wall done. It was almost finished. 500 miles of wall. It was almost finished. They want it to be open. And first,
Okay, number one, 500 miles of wall. That's not the entirety. That wasn't even the original promise that he's talking about. The original promise by Trump, and everybody was clear, was this idea that he was going to make a giant-ass wall from one end to the other end, staff it with, people with, guns, right, that are going to stop anybody from crossing the border, even though the majority of undocumented immigration are from, visa overstays and not just from border crossings. So and it's literally just an inefficient use of funds. But whatever. Okay, whatever. And Mexico will pay for it, which they never did.
I thought they were incompetent. And now I realize they actually want it open. They want open borders.
Well,
We're
there's
going to have
an agenda.
tens of millions of people pouring in. We have no idea who they are.
Well, there's an agenda behind it. For me, from the time I met you and I came into politics, went all in, that they just made sense because of your common sense solutions.
Yeah.
And I have seen, of all the politicians I met now, I can count on two hands, if that maybe one hand, of the politicians that have the people's back like you do, where you're making decisions. So I tell everyone, even my, I have no Democrats and liberal friends. I'm going, all you got to do is look at the decisions that are being made right now. If they don't help anybody,
Right.
they've got their own agenda, and I always said,
Well, look at the money they make. They're full-time politicians, Pelosi and all these people, Waters,
right.
Obama. I expected to lose a lot of money.
Right.
I lost billions. I expected that. It was okay.
Right.
These people made money being president.
Yep.
And if somebody from Saudi Arabia stays at a suite one night for peanuts,
Right.
even though I'm willing to lose billions of dollars, and they stay and they pay $600 or whatever it is, they'll make somebody stayed at the suite. I mean, it's the most incredible thing.
It's nonsense.
But these people have made a fortune. Many of them have made a fortune. And I was prepared. I felt that if I go in, the brand, all of a sudden, half the people like you. I think
Been
it's
there.
more than that. I actually do. I think it's more than
Yeah,
that.
oh, it
You know,
is,
Mike,
yeah.
I don't think it's a 50-50 country.
Oh, no.
When you have things like no voter ID, defund the police.
So he's just making up his. I just don't believe the polls. I'm gonna make up my own polls. The majority of the country loves me. Okay, you know, usually when the majority of the country loves you, they actually vote you back in for office. And like he even had like incumbents advantage.
Open borders, sanctuary cities, all of the stuff they have. I don't believe 50% of the people vote for them.
No.
I think they cheat on
No,
elections
they absolutely
and they do other
cheat.
things, and that gets them up to that 50%. But they can't have 50% with those policies.
Absolutely not. And you know, when you were president, I kept telling people everybody loves our president. Some just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And what was happening is here's a bucket of people, the stuff you did. Or here's people that voted for you. Okay, and here's another bucket again. And I keep telling you, there isn't one thing you ever did which a person would go that way. So it was a constant pouring of the people over here. And you know, the real total is you got over 80 million votes. That's fact. I've got that. That's fact. Over 80.
It's not. You literally just had a bunch of weird code that meant nothing. And also, what is with him in bucket analogies? He's really into buckets, man.
80 million, the most of anybody in history.
Yeah.
You know, and people over here, they're waking up. They're not only, I believe we get through this and it's just going to be an amazing place, but we had to go through it all.
Well, the
and you were
beauty
able
is-
to smash that and just.
Well, you have been so brave. You're an incredible patriot. You have been so brave. I'll never forget the first rally. I've seen you for years on television, but I never met you. And I'm making a speech, and I think Alabama, I had like 65,000 people in the audience, and I see you. I said, that's the pillow guy. I can't believe it. The pillow guy is here. But you're an incredible patriot, and people love you.
No. Well, it becomes pretty easy when we lose our country, you know, and it's like, you know.
But isn't it amazing? You give the facts.
Yeah.
You say, here's how they cheated. Because, you know, now we know much more than we did a few months ago, and every month we learn more. When you look at what happened in Wisconsin, when you look at what they just did in Arizona, they just found some in Pima County.
Yeah, Pima County. 100% of the people voted that live in the county.
Yeah, that's right.
And
No, the
everyone,
whole
you
thing,
know.
they just found this out 2 days ago. And you see it. And you present it to politicians that are friends of ours, sort of.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, don't worry, you're going to win next time. I say, wait a minute.
There is no next time.
There is none.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a country left. But and I'm saying these are good people.
Right.
They say, oh, don't worry about it. 45,000 votes,
Right.
which is far more than you need, right?
Right.
Don't worry about it. You're going to win next time. I say, where do they come? Now, then we have the other kind that are so on our side.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to comprehend what he's saying at this point. He's just rambling. I have no fucking clue what he's saying. We just got to get through the rambling.
I'm amazed that so many people say, sir, you're doing so well. Don't worry.
So many
you're gonna win
people.
the next time.
Right.
That
People are
means
saying-
that we're allowed to have a president that had all of this stuff going on,
Right.
running our country.
Which didn't.
And he's doing such a poor job.
No.
It's not like, wow, the
Right.
country's, and that in theory shouldn't matter either. But the fact is we have somebody that's destroying our country. You look at inflation, you look at the economy,
Everything.
you look at Afghanistan. That was the most embarrassing moment for our country,
In history.
in the history of our country. You look at every single thing, even look at the supply chains. Did you ever hear even a question of a problem with the supply chain?
Right.
So you have thousands of ships probably causing you a lot of problem
they're
in
all-
your
they're
business.
They're all lucky. I make a lot of my product
Yeah,
here.
you make it
know.
here.
But I'll tell you this: if I'd have been their marketer, and on inauguration day, I would have said, I would have gotten in a room and said, okay, let's not do anything stupid to ruin the country until they shut up about the 2020 election.
Yeah.
But what do they do the first day? They lay off 50,000 union jobs, shut the pipeline down. They knew what that would manifest to. It's not just what you pay in gas. All the shipping right now, it's going to be double-digit inflation. People have no idea what's coming, and it's
Can I also just state, when people like complain about the inflation, so there's a few reasons why we have inflation. Number one is because the country's opening back up. And once you open back up after, like, you close the whole country down, there's going to be some inflation, right? Because people are going out and buying shit, doing shit, right? But in the UK, which has a much more, I guess you could say, fiscal conservative policy than we do in the United States, right? Because it's led by, you know, Boris Johnson. Strong conservative majority, right? Their inflation was double what it was expected to be. This is not just some like isolated problem where Biden stepped in, the inflation skyrocketed because Biden did all the Democrat welfare whatever the hell you think. This is something that this is happening internationally. So just trying to lambaste Biden as if he just magically made the country just have magical inflation is ridiculous. I find it to be ridiculous. Is it possible that like his like spending policies had an impact on inflation too? Yes, but if you want to get us out of a recession, you're going to have to spend money. And if you want to help people who are suffering, you're also going to have to spend money. But you cannot blame him for something that's happening internationally to also fiscally conservative leaders around the world as well.
All because of what? The steal of the November
Mike, I
3rd election.
closed the Russian pipeline to Europe and to Germany. I closed the Russian pipeline all over Europe. I closed it.
Yeah.
And then they say, "Oh, he's so friendly with Russia." That's the biggest thing you could do.
Mm-hmm.
And I got along with Putin.
Yeah.
I got along with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I ran it like you're supposed to run it.
Right.
And then Biden comes along and he opens it.
No. No.
I mean, that's the biggest thing you can do. But he closes our Keystone pipeline.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine
that doesn't even make sense. Yeah.
No, it doesn't make
And
sense.
13 of them have committed suicide right away. They were promised
Right.
jobs.
And then he gets good publicity. He closes it, and they hardly talk about it. They don't talk about Afghanistan anymore. You never see it on the news. That story disappeared weeks ago. The most embarrassing thing ever happened to our country. We fled. We surrendered. 13 young people were killed. They don't talk about the people whose arms are gone, whose legs are gone.
No.
You know, we had 28 soldiers, no legs, no arms. One had 2 legs gone, 1 arm gone. They don't even talk about those people. We left Americans behind by the thousands, possibly.
Okay, can I ask chat, is there any reality where Donald Trump managed to withdraw any better than Biden did? Now, the first thing that would have changed if Trump was the manager of that withdrawal, right, is that I do not think that those who helped us in Afghanistan would have been prioritized or cared about at all. Donald Trump is somebody who said, I want to bomb the families of terrorists, right? Number one. And I want a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States, right? I don't think he would have cared that much about those who helped us in Afghanistan, if I'm being completely honest, because this might be a surprise to some viewers, but Afghanistan is full of a lot of Muslims, right? Number two, Trump laid the groundwork for that withdrawal. His policy on Afghanistan flip-flopped. He started by dropping the mother of all bombs on Afghanistan, increasing drone strikes by a massive amount, while also restricting public information and transparency when it comes to drone strikes. As in, he restricted the information that the public, the American public, was given on how we conduct our airstrikes, how many airstrikes. He was restricting the public data because he didn't want to see exactly, he didn't want that level of transparency, so to speak. And so he starts that way. He even does a troop surge in Afghanistan. And then by the end of his presidency, he's negotiating with the Taliban and signing deals with them, which are then promptly violated. And then Biden inherits those deals, which Biden, being somebody who's wanted to get us out of Afghanistan since like 2011, 2012, this is something that actually got him heat within the Obama administration. It's like, okay, let's get us out, because he believes that we had no reason to continue to be in Afghanistan. He had said this in private in the Obama administration, according to multiple staffers and officials. It's not that big of a surprise. And he withdraws, and he did fumble a lot. I have criticisms of Biden's withdrawal. But I have no reason to believe that Trump would have managed to withdraw any better, and I have reason to believe that I think he actually would have managed it worse. I do not think he would have been able to have the skill to actually pull off one of the largest airlifts in human history, number one. And number two, I do not think he would have cared nearly as much about those who helped us in Afghanistan.
We left, and he took the military out before all the others. And then we left $85 billion worth of equipment.
Yeah.
And people don't talk about it. When was the last time you heard the word Afghanistan? You and I talked about it.
You did.
By the way, if you don't believe me, all you need to do is look at the withdrawal from northeastern Syria. It was announced in the middle of the night with basically no preparation, and it was so fast that when Russian troops went to like American bases or where Americans were in northeastern Syria, they still found open Coke cans on desks and shit. It was so fast and so rapid. And there was American equipment still there. And there was multiple close calls with the Turkish military as well. So if you want a blueprint for how exactly Trump would have managed to withdraw, I think we can just look at northeastern Syria, which it didn't really go splendidly. Oh, and when you talk about carelessness for civilians, Jesus Christ, the amount of war crimes, the Turkish-backed militias, many of which, by the way, were former ISIS fighters, committed after that, unspeakable.
Yeah, you know what it was? Not even 2 days later, or a couple of days later, he gets on TV and talks about if you have 100 people, you have a mandate in your company. If you have more than 100 employees, that was just a deflection to not talk about Afghanistan. So everybody gets up in
that's
there.
one of the reasons
That's the
also
media, crooked
that our
media.
economy is going bad, the mandate.
I want to put in closing. I want to say there's, back to the election of 2020. I want to thank you, and everyone does, for standing firm on that, because anyone that moves on from that, then you're saying you're okay with that, and you've given strength to millions of people that are behind you, and we're going to get it gone. I've said we're going to melt down the machines and use them into prison bars.
It's very interesting. It's a very good idea. But of all the things I talk about, like at rallies, we have these great rallies, 69,000 people, 55,000 people. We're going to Nevada soon. We got a massive field, and it's going to be packed instantly. So I can feel an audience, so can you. The thing they want to talk about more than any other subject is the election fraud of 2020, because they want that fixed, because they can't.
Okay, I think this is self-evident, but why the reason we had what happened on January 6th with over 150 cops being injured, bombs being planted, the media being assaulted, the Capitol being stormed, the multiple congressional officials having their lives put in danger, Ashley Babbitt getting shot, multiple cops killing themselves afterwards, the death of Brian Sicknick, which, like, a lot of people for some fucking reason still want to say that his death had nothing to do with what happened on the day. I'm baffled, because if you look at the the coroner's report, I think it's pretty fucking clear that they said that the day's event contributed to his death. And I don't know how if the question is how he died after. I mean, if they think he just like spontaneously combusted, I don't know. Anyway, the reason that happened was because it was a Stop the Steal event. What does that mean? As in, the event was about the election being stolen, right? And so if Trump is out there promoting the conspiracy theory that the election being stolen, and then you see a bunch of people go to the Capitol because they believe that the democracy in the United States is basically fraudulent, and that the rightfully elected leader of the quote-unquote free world, or whatever the hell you want to call it, is about to be usurped, it's not that big of a surprise that those people who thought the election was being stolen would take, power into their own hands and then storm the Capitol. If I genuinely believed that the election was being stolen and we were about to have somebody wrongfully become president of the United States, it wouldn't actually be that difficult to convince me that storming the Capitol is the correct decision, because that could mean the death of our democracy. So by him perpetuating this lie, it led to what happened on January 6th. If I convince everyone that, I don't know, all dentists murder babies, right? And then you see a spike in killings of dentists, it's not that difficult to connect the dots there.
Can't have a country without that. I used to say borders. We got to have borders. We don't have borders. But we don't have elections, and we don't have a free and fair press. So this country has a long way to go.
Well, I've said it before too. If you have a cyber attack, which I've stood firm on that. I have the evidence. And if you have a cyber attack, you have cyber attacks every day. We have it on our gas line. We have it on credit card companies, businesses like ours. When you have this, it's like you got protection. Well, your geeks are better than the good geeks are better than the bad geeks. And then virus protection and all this.
Right.
Well, if you get through, what it amounts to is just a money thing. But when you get through in an election, you take everything. Our freedoms, everything. And that's where I think, where people have to realize out there, even I really believe, if I've told journalists out there, do you care about your country? But their bosses, whatever, they can't even print something good if they wanted to. And that's so hard getting around. You almost got to use the bad media to even get the word out. You know?
Well, it's incredible when communities like Milwaukee, they don't want to show their records, okay?
Yeah.
Philadelphia, known as being one of the most corrupt places, and especially as it pertains to elections. But Detroit.
Yeah. He's like, wait, did I lose there? Most corrupt place on earth. Did I win there? Perfectly safe. No corruption. Don't worry about it.
Is the king of them all.
Right.
And they don't want to have you look at anything.
Right.
And you found out that in much easier times where the mail-in stuff was, much tougher, they found 5%. Now in times where many, many times the number go out, they find it's less than 1/100th of 1%.
Right.
In other words, it's never corrupt. It's
What does that even mean? I think he means fraudulent. I don't know what corrupt means. How do you have a corrupt vote? I don't even know what that means.
massively corrupt because it has to be much more than before they sent all
Well,
of
it
this
is.
stuff.
This is the only election in history where you have all these states where massive amounts of non-residents voted in each state, or people that were dead. Well, of course they didn't vote.
That's literally just not true. It's just false.
They use their names. What we've been doing around is getting all the states.
Look, you'll see these like giant lists of like, here's all the people who voted that was dead. You look at the lists. Some of them just didn't vote at all, okay? Some of them are names of people who are still alive. Some of them are people who adopted their husbands or wives, like surname and stuff like that, or like last name and stuff like that. Like, you'll look through these lists, and you'll basically find, like, almost zero in every cases of election fraud.
Who registered their
Right.
voter rolls and the people that registered, that on their voter rolls afterward. So we can get it. Everyone can have access to these. We have access to them, and you look at these anomalies going, okay, this county has this many people, but yet 2,000 more people voted that live there.
No. Well, you have more votes than you have people.
Yeah,
And
there's
they
a
try
problem.
and pretend there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that. And it amazes me where these communities, though, don't want to have anyone see it. In fact, they get rid of the evidence. And they don't want to have anyone. And you're not talking about a lot of votes. A lot of votes are cheated on. But we lost by so.
Do you know who Mike Lindell is going to be interviewing after Trump? Infrared, about his debate win with Destiny.
Little.
Right. Well, they did
relative to the
she
vote.
did just enough to, you got so many votes that they had to, it broke everything, the algorithms on 11 o'clock on election night.
Yeah.
One of the things, you can take apart everything, the deviations that I've seen. One of the things, I watched Arizona for a week. Took a week to count 2% of the vote. Well, they had to spend a week figuring out, because you were going to go by 80,000. You won Arizona by 250,000 votes.
Wow.
They had to figure out how are we going to.
Do you know how absurd a claim that is? That Trump won Arizona by 250,000 votes. Not only is that not reflected in any of the polling or anything on the planet Earth, not even Republican pollsters would give it to him. It's just on a separate planet. The amount of cover-up that would need to be happening. And by the way, they did the audit. They even looked for the bamboo nonsense. And all it showed was, oh, actually Biden won by more votes. Thank you, never mind. Where did we get this number? 250,000 votes is out of nowhere. The cyber ninjas must have found it.
Cheat. It took them a week. Michigan, they were easy. You know what they did? They dumped 100 and some thousand votes for Biden in the middle of the night. You can watch it. And then,
Man, it's crazy. It's almost like there was something about this election that was different about all the other elections when it comes to comparing how many people voted by mail in comparison to the last election. Almost like there was like some like big thing that was going on during the election that made people not want to go vote in person, and that one party specifically downplayed that thing while the other party was very concerned about that thing, therefore leading to more voter turnout in person for one party over the other. If only I could figure it out, man. It's a complicated code.
and they say to us, what? Well, those were those mail-in votes. Well, here, what people don't know.
When you look at that chart in Michigan,
right,
where it's
but
going along,
and
then
then-
all of a sudden
right.
it spikes up to the ceiling.
Right, and what people don't realize is those weren't mail-in votes. The mail-in votes were not counted in the middle of the night on the 4th. They were the first votes counted
right.
on the morning of the 3rd.
That's right.
So you say that to people. One of the things that when you had that conversation with terrible, crooked Brad Rassenberger in Georgia, that phone call, that right there should, everyone in this country should have said, you need to show your stuff, Rassenberger, because you asked them, well, gee, you had 15,000.
To be clear, the call that he is talking about is the call I mentioned earlier. when he was talking to Rassenberger, or whatever his hell's name is, he was telling him to just find the votes to make him win. He was just straight up asking, could you please just make me the winner of the election? Just find the votes that says Donald Trump won, I vote for Donald Trump, and just add them. Over 20,000 of them. He was just straight up asking for somebody who cares about election integrity, right? Or cares about election integrity. He was just straight up asking for the election to just be given to him. No matter how many people in Georgia voted for Biden.
Non-resident voted 6,000. It was right in front of all these stats.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying, he goes, can you give us a couple of these? These people can't vote. And he said, well, those aren't the real numbers. And you said, well, where are the real numbers? And one of your attorneys, whatever, said, we got them from him, sir. Yeah. And then you asked him, when are we going to get the real numbers? He never provided the real numbers. Ever.
And they said they were going to meet.
Yeah.
And we never met. They would never meet.
You know.
And he said, I think there were 2 dead people, right?
Yeah.
Not thousands. There were 2 dead people.
Thousands.
He said that on the call. It's not even believable what's taken place. You know what else is unbelievable? You have somebody called, and even Republicans like the rhinos,
right?
They sort of just want to get on with life.
That's sad.
And you say, why?
Yeah.
Is it dishonesty or is it complacency?
I like your sweater. A lot of love for the sweater today. I appreciate it, Chad.
What is it?
Yeah.
But you are a fighter, and I'll tell you, this country someday, I really believe this country someday is going to be very appreciative of what you've done.
Thank you. But it's, sir, I give my glory to God.
Me, but you are you're a great patriot.
I will say this, what I've learned, it's... What's that?
We just have to wrap right after this.
Yep. I want to say one more thing here. What surprises me is I mean, since the cyber symposium, I've been going into the red states. You'd think you'd get their voter rolls, show them, and say, hey, let's look inside your machines, right through to your routers. Here's what happened here. You go to a residence where one person lives there, you find out 12 live there, but they didn't. They just used their name.
Right.
So you show them this. You show him all this.
He's just rambling.
No, we were secure.
To be clear, this is what he's ending the interview on. He's just fucking rambling.
I'm going, look at it. And these are, some of them are people, and it's like you say, why are you being complacent? It's almost like if we did nothing, if we let 2020 didn't let it go, you know what they'd be saying 2 years from now? Well, I wish we'd have listened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think we're doing a very important thing. We're going to find out.
Yeah.
You mentioned red states. It's very interesting that we went to Texas.
To be clear, Mike Lindell, like every week after the election, would come out like, I got the big bombshell, don't worry. I got the big bombshell, don't worry. And he would drop every single bombshell and would end up being a dud. And his big cyber symposium that Mike Lindell hosted that was supposed to be the big thing, goes all the way up to the Supreme Court overturn the election, it literally turned out nothing. All he did was presented a bunch of code that was literally worthless and had nothing to do with whether or not they won the election.
They want to have a big thing, even though I won Texas by a lot.
Yeah.
We should have won it by much, much more. Texas is not a blue state, okay?
Right.
And we had a tremendous victory in Texas and in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
But I have no doubt that there were a lot of things that went on, and they should really get to it. Because you're going to lose elections in those states eventually.
Right.
You're going to lose Texas at some point, you didn't really lose it.
Right. The most votes were California #1 stole, and Texas #2, Florida #3. Yeah. It was all 50 states, and
if we didn't swamp them in Texas and Florida, I wouldn't have won those two states.
I would have took them. You're exactly right. Well, we're going to get through it all, and I believe that when we get way out here, we're going to look back and all this had to happen just the way God intended it, because everything that you did to show us what great leadership should be and what it can manifest to help all people while we're alive and to have a great life in this country, the best country in the world.
Christ, okay. That person's, what the
And I want to thank you, as millions do, for being the greatest president we've ever had.
The greatest ever.
I appreciate you so much.
To be clear, there was a president who led us through a civil war, okay? And won. Through 2 terms. Okay, whatever. Well, before, of course. He literally gave his life for the Republic. Whatever. Okay.
Really an honor.
But did he own the libs? No, he owned the Confederates.
Is we're going to look back at what they did, and we're going to say they did a terrible job, so they won't be able to talk.
Right.
because the job they've done is record-setting bad, and we're going to take back our country.
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, God bless you. Thank you,
you
sir.
very much.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself.